I would like to set the stage maybe with a couple of suggestions. You know, we wanted to talk about promoting and protecting personal brands in an always-on world. That seemed like the thread that was going through this. And, you know, they all had their concerns. And I'd like to start maybe with Rosemary to my right. And in particular, how do you protect Rachael Ray's brand in an age of social networking and always-on accessibility?
It's a good question. First of all, Harriet, I'm so impressed by what you do because I follow Oprah and Sherry and everything you're doing through Facebook and Twitter. So well done.
Oh, thank
Congratulations. You know, it's a good question because it's so different working for a celebrity and a personality rather than like when I was at Barnes & Noble or Reader's Digest, you're selling a product and someone could get mad because they didn't get their book on time and you could, you know, give them some good customer service and take care of the problem and it goes away. It's not so emotional. But with a person, you're dealing with a very emotional relationship maybe and their reputation. So I had to learn really quickly when I came there that the way that we might handle a customer complaint or a situation is very different. And you have to be very sensitive to that. So when I look at something like Twitter, which Rachael handles all of her own tweets, you know, people say to us, well, why doesn't she have more followers? She's only got like 800 some thousand. Because she really does it, and she does it with what she feels like saying, and she's very genuine. You know, she likes to talk about what she's making for dinner, or if she's gone to see music, but she's not one of those people that likes to kind of work it and get the biggest number of followers, and that's her personal preference. But what I've noticed and what bothers me a little bit is it's opened her up both with Twitter or Facebook, and we do have the RachelRay.com or show and all these other properties, that it's opened her up to this relationship with people where they use it as a platform to be heard. And sometimes it's great because they're great compliments, it's good feedback. And sometimes I think people are abusing it and they just use it because they want to see their name up and they may say things that are horrible. So, you know, that's become my sort of latest challenge is how do you manage those situations when people are complaining endlessly and then another person jumps on the bandwagon and they sort of become inappropriate about it. And it's very different from the days when our only way of communicating with people were through email or they would come to one of Rachael's book signings and talk. So I've sort of begun to question, do they really have these complaints about this person or do they just like to kind of see themselves, you know, in their name in lights, if you will? So we have to be very sensitive to how we respond. I'm sure you guys have the same experience, how we respond to people via social, because whatever you say is going to get around. And, you know, and it's always on. People are tweeting 24/7. And you have to be very sensitive to that. So it's, you know, it's a concern, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our experience is very similar. Oprah does all of her own tweeting, and we don't put up anything on her Facebook page unless she has approved it. So she's not as comfortable with Facebook as she is with Twitter. She's on Twitter all the time. And, you know, it really is an extension of everything else that Rachael's brand is about or Oprah's brand is about. You know, if you are true to the values of your brand, I think the community starts to be somewhat self-selecting.
Yeah.
So, you know, Oprah is very inclined to say whatever she feels like on Twitter. Like if somebody says, Oprah doesn't look very good today, she'll go, really, what's wrong? Like she doesn't have any problem really reaching out one-on-one and confronting people or, you know, making a big giant mistake like saying, you know, if you're a Nielsen family, will you please watch my network, which, you know, as everybody probably remembers, got huge blowback. You know, that's an authentic mistake. What it says in a social media world is really we who are doing the social media for her and for OWN, we don't control that. But what it makes people who are in the social media world following her trust her more that what she does say is for real and it's out there. And as long as she maintains a certain level of, you know, her own self-expected honesty and authenticity, that does tend to sort of self-select, I think. And then when she is wanting to promote something or tell people to watch something or share something, they know that it's true, and they want to pass it on. You know, and I think it isn't really about absolute numbers, even though Oprah's numbers are very, very big, and since we focused on it, it's gotten, you know, her followings have gotten much bigger, but the level of engagement that happens. So, you know, what we've seen is that the more she personally engages and people see that momentum, the more that the relationship builds, and the more she's able to actually use those relationships to build on other parts of her business. So, for instance, she'll tweet every Sunday morning during her favorite show on the network called Super Soul Sunday, and she'll tweet typically every Sunday night during Next Chapter. And that has become kind of appointment television and live tweeting, you know, for hundreds of thousands of people, and they know she's going to be there. They know other regulars are going to be there, and she's been able to use that social media relationship to bring people to the network and, you know, start to take these different platforms and weave them together, kind of in a new definition of what her platforms are.
It sounds all very personal between Rachael Ray and Harpo and Oprah, whereas a lot of people in the audience are focused on how do I get more followers? How do I send out a tweet that's going to drive people to a website? Sounds like you're not doing that at all. You're really actively she's just being herself online. Is there, though, a strategy to draw, you know, do you intersperse certain posts
100%.
within there that are driving? Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, we'll say to her, you know, we're, for instance, right now working on a meditation program with Deepak Chopra. It's something she believes in. So we'll say, Oprah, will you tweet this out? You know, we want to invite people to participate in this. And if she agrees with it, then she'll do that. You know, she wants people to watch Next Chapter. She wants people to watch certain shows on the network. So she will, in her own words, you know, invite people to do that, whether she's you know, posting a picture from backstage or, you know, while she's interviewing somebody. So I think it's coming up with the right combination of authentic moments that are personal moments, that are her personal endorsements of things that she wants to share with people, whether it's one of her businesses or not one of her businesses. But that platform, that fundamental platform of trust, allows her to, and allows us to then retweet, et cetera, more of the strategic kinds of business things that we want to get across.
And Harriet, like Ro, is I think alluding to the challenges of the trolls and the harassment. Do you just ignore all that? Do you block people, or do you just ignore it?
You know, on Oprah.com we did a lot of that. You really can't do that, I don't think, in a social media world. Yeah. You just have to let those people go by the wayside, and
right.
I think typically they do.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, we're, you know, like you were explaining, we might suggest things to Rachael, and she'll talk about who's coming on her show, but she wants to use it not necessarily with the thought, oh, this is going to get me more followers, or I'm driving people to something, but, you know, something that makes sense to the consumers, something that makes sense to people. If she thinks she's giving people value, she'll do it. So, for instance, she had a book come out this year that was her most personal book. It was called My Year in Meals. And for 1 year, she literally took pictures with her iPhone of everything she made. And her husband he's an amateur mixologist, he made cocktails and he took pictures. And if you flip the book, it says My Year in Cocktails. So as sort of like trying to bring books together with the digital world, and also because, again, she was trying to give people value beyond just the book, we decided to come up with a corresponding web program where, you know, since the book's been published, she's continuing to write and post recipes and continuing to post photos, so you can kind of stay with it. And she wanted to give that purely as a value to the people who bought the book, so that people, and the publisher liked that too. But, you know, eventually, I think this could lead to, you know, a program that continues for a long time, and a brand that maybe even brings new people in who didn't buy the book, who maybe then want to, because there is a value to a print property. But that's the kind of thing she got very excited about, because it felt very real and, you know, and valuable.
Well, you know, everyone, I think, in this room wants to get retweeted by Oprah, right? Or Rachael Ray.
Yeah.
Like, do they ever, you know, are they ever doing that besides there are people who are on the show, for example?
yeah,
Like, if I
all
get
the
a
time.
great tweet, will, you know, Rachael Ray retweet me if I
Yeah.
have a good recipe, for example?
Yeah, but she can only get to so many a day.
Sure.
She definitely does.
She does. Okay, good. Harriet, any?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Sure.
Yeah, and, you know, I think,
I mean, outside of other celebrities, she does
Oh, yeah.
retweet other people's.
there's a self-proclaimed group of people called the OWN Ambassadors. They've just identified themselves, and they're on every live tweet event that we ever do. And, you know, she's developed a personal relationship with all of them. And there's like 40 of them, and they have nobody following anybody but themselves. But she tweets with them all the time.
Sure.
And it's really that kind of authenticity that I think, you know, what it just starts to do is build a community, and within that community, you know, you wind up having, you know, a deeper level of engagement and a deeper level of continuity in a way that I think starts to open the door for sort of the more pragmatic parts of the business.
Mm-hmm. And Laxmi, of course, a more challenging environment in that you've got the Michael J. Fox brand, but really the Parkinson's Foundation brand as well. That must be a real challenging thing to balance.
Yeah, well, Harriet just mentioned community, and that's what we're trying to build, the Parkinson's community online. You know, we hold Michael's name as part of our brand, the Michael J. Fox Foundation, but what we try to do is take inspiration from him, his optimism, his integrity, his humor in some ways. I think we have some work to do on that end, but we try. But it's not about him, right? It's not about finding a cure for Michael. It's about finding a cure for Parkinson's disease, and so it's about the community. And so we use social media in particular. I think that's a little bit of what we're talking about here, to build that community, to engage with the community, and really we started to do that. I joined the foundation, and our digital strategy team came when I came to the foundation close to 2 years ago. We started to really do that when we had a call to action for the community that was beyond give us money. So beyond that donate call to action, when we started to really need patients and controls for clinical trials, that's when we had a real call to action that could be a social movement, and that's really what we started to use social media to do.
Right, and beyond Twitter then, Facebook pages?
You know what, our Facebook community is the largest, so we have 220,000 Facebook fans, and we have about 20,000 Twitter followers. We've seen that Twitter has been a lot of communication really with pharma industry. That's that seems to be where that growth is coming from. But Facebook is a real community, and it's not just us posting, but it's the community engaging with each other. I mean, I find it amazing. You can go to our Facebook page, and daily there is someone saying, I just got diagnosed with Parkinson's this morning. You know, and that our Facebook page is where they would want to make that statement.
It's like a support group.
It is. It really is an online support group. And Rosemary, you were talking about some of the challenges. Some of the challenges that we face in social media is we are a research organization. Our mission is to find a cure for Parkinson's disease, and we are not a patient care organization. But people come to our Facebook page and they say, you know, I'm on this medication, I'm having these side effects, or and we struggle with, we want to provide a service and engage with you know, this community, but we don't have the resources to answer everyone's questions. We have one MD on staff, but we can't offer you know, advice, you know, on their medications or other regimen. And so that's a little bit of what we struggle with.
Wow, that's interesting. And you know, I could bring in Katerina at this point. It's a great segue, but maybe before we do that, how big is there a team behind this? Is it just you, or you know, are you outsourcing this to an agency, internal PR firm?
No, we do not outsource to an agency. We have one social media specialist.
Wow.
She's on our. She reports to me, and she does.
She works
all
24
of our
hours a
social
day.
Pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, we do. You know, on the weekends we try to use like Hootsuite to schedule some posts. But,
Tim Tulloch here from Hootsuite, right there. You can go see him later. Vice President Tim Tulloch.
But yeah, there are a lot of us that are trying to monitor so that we can answer questions as they come up. You know, or hide, you know, inappropriate posts if we need to.
Sure.
But it really is, Stephanie is really the one person.
You want to give her some credit? Stephanie who?
Stephanie Start, she's amazing.
All-star.
She's a star.
Very good. And Ro, how's your team, or is there a team?
Yeah, well, you know, we have a little bit of bifurcation because we have Rachael herself, like I mentioned, and then we have who I work for directly, and our company is her you know, wholly owned entity. But then we have her TV show and her magazine, and each one has its own social identity. So therefore, they have their people, and we have our people. But the teams for social are very, very small.
Wow.
I mean, our web teams are bigger because there's a lot more heavy lifting, but our social teams are tight, and it really kind of has to be controlled like that.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I would have thought there was a much bigger, there an army behind it in Harriet. Big team, small team, just.
We have kind of 2.5 dedicated people on
Wow.
social media and an outside group of community managers that really are, boots on the ground all
It's
the time.
amazing what you're doing with such a small team. And so, Katerina, maybe I think for people who don't know about Atom Factory, could you give us a little bit of background? And also, your background with Shine and Reveille, and, you've done some incredible stuff before that.
Of course. When you asked me to be on the entertainment panel, I was a little confused because we are, at our heart, Atom Factory is an artist management company. We manage Lady Gaga, John Legend, Mindless Behavior, Grayson Chance, and a number of others. But it really does make sense that I'm speaking on this panel
Right.
because we are so much more than just a management company. Where we have an angel investment fund.
And just a background, this is owned by
It's
Lady
owned
Gaga's
by-
manager. Right?
Lady Gaga's manager, Troy Carter, founded the company a few years ago. He's been on the cover of Wired, Fast Company, plenty of articles in Forbes, and is not what you think of a typical artist manager. And this company is really the future of the music business, but really the future of the entertainment business. We're invested in about 40 startups, everything from Spotify to Uber to Fab to Dropbox. We're launching a beverage company.
When you say it's an artist management company, it sounds like a venture capital company.
Yeah.
That is part of it.
Right.
Yep. And that intersection is really, really special and what drives the success of our talent and also our company always finding innovation and disruption in everything that we do. And
Right.
so we also have a creative agency in-house, and we're launching a beverage company called Pop Water in a few weeks with Terry Richardson and Gaga, and launching a YouTube network and so many more things. And I just wanted to comment on the social media piece because I never had a chance. And the entertainment industry until now, there's never been that direct relationship between personality and audience. There's always been intermediaries, whether it's radio or television, and now with Facebook and Twitter and the rise of visual web such as Pinterest, Tumblr, all these platforms, there's now kind of more of an authentic relationship that can be formed. But in our opinion, it's still, those companies are still intermediaries. They own the data. They
Twitter, you mean? Yeah, Twitter, Facebook, they own the data.
There's
Yep.
only so much data that you can actually get from them. And so what we did about a year ago is launch a company called Backplane with funding from Google Ventures and Sequoia. And it's essentially, we launched Gaga's own social network called littlemonsters.com, and she's able to have a direct relationship with her fans, and we've and so in terms of that conversation of protecting your brand, a few months ago there were plenty of articles online about her gaining weight, and to respond to that, the next day she posted a photo of herself in lingerie on littlemonsters.com and sparked what she called the Body Revolution 2013, and asked her fans to start posting and invited them to post photos of themselves and their stories with weight gain and struggle with
Beautiful.
weight issues. And there were thousands of photos on there and thousands of stories, and really it's a perfect example of using social media to engage with audience and respond to
Positively, yeah, positively
But
too.
I love that story because she took control of the issue and responded, and she became in charge. I think people sense vulnerability, and in that case, she said, I'm going to handle this my way and a positive way, and turned it into a really positive thing. Whereas, you know, I've seen it happen the other way, where somebody maybe gets defensive or says the wrong thing, and then they're just like,
Then the flame war starts.
yeah.
Nothing
Yeah, so
positive comes of
great
it.
that she did
And
that.
when you say she did it, did Lady Gaga do that, or was this the strategy of
No,
Adam Factory
she
or
did
some
it.
publicist?
She did it.
Wow. Right. And so what I like to, the thread that's gone through the whole day is analytics, data, big data. The more data we have, you know, Eric Garland on the last panel, big champagne. It sounds like she wants to take control not only of these messages, but of the platform in starting creating her own platform. So she gets the data to do analytics from.
Right, and the data is something that we use internally, actually, our team and our company, to, we can pre-sell tickets on the platform. We use data from our investment in Spotify and our relationship with them. In terms of the streaming, we can actually figure out what song lists the sets to play at a show, and using some of the ticketing data to reroute the tour.
Wow, oh, amazing. Now, one of the questions I have is on monetizing these connections. It's always kind of a tough word when you're dealing with an audience but it sounds like people are willing to just throw money at Lady Gaga, you know, no matter what you do. But how are you monetizing the connections, monetizing the platform?
Well, like I mentioned, the monetizing the platform is actually using it to sell events. With her fragrance launch, weeks before the fragrance launch, she was already communicating with fans directly, and these super fans, about the launch of the fragrance, and it ended up being the top-selling fragrance in the world, and so very quickly. So really using those relationships as marketing, and then also the ticket sales through the platform, and who knows what else.
Yeah, you could have easily been on the music panel too. I mean, clearly, and you know, we say that we're shifting from paid for and owned to on demand and free, right? And you're monetizing in experiential and other events and things beyond the music, which is fascinating to me. That again is another thread, which is innovation. You have to disrupt. You know, we call it self-disruption. You know, how are you disrupting this business? And innovation is key. That runs through. I think all of the chief digital officers that have been up here are real innovators in their own field. And I always wonder how much of this is Lady Gaga and how much of this is a giant team of managers, publicists. Sounds like she is extremely entrepreneurial and innovative.
Right. No, I mean, she's really creative and entrepreneurial, and is a great business person. We have a really interesting kind of framework for our company, and it's a really flat organization. And when you talk about kind of the roles of a digital officer, it's almost like everyone in our company has all those skill sets. And so what really makes my role different maybe is just the innovation part, and really being on the forefront of what's next in technology and startups, and what are those kind of big picture questions. But in terms of social media, analytics, data, a lot of our team is capable of building a website, you know, building a website, mobile apps, all that stuff.
Let's go back to broadcasts with Rachael Ray and Oprah. How are, you know, what are the kinds of things that you're doing to leverage the built-in audience that you have on broadcast to Twitter? I know, you know, putting the hashtag, putting the Twitter address, but, you know, live tweets or things from the show. Any tips or things that you're doing that have really kind of blown out the Twitter following?
I mean, I could speak briefly. I don't work at CBS, but you know, they found it very important to use social and digital in general for what they do, whether it's to have unique video content, you know, behind the scenes interviews or stuff like that. They don't do original programming online, you know, not like Oprah. But there is the possibility of us doing that in the future. We're thinking of that as the next step. But how does this show actually use social to promote itself? They stay in community. Another interesting thing I was going to say, Harriet, is that I think it's interesting to me, because Harpo is such a big company, that you've also been able to make other people, celebrities, like Sherry has a following. I follow her. You know, it's not just Oprah. It's who else is part of this Oprah team. And I think that, you know, the Rachael CBS, they have a little bit of that going on, but not nearly to the extent, which I find interesting. But they use it in a very promotional way. But they're like I said, they're trying to do some kind of original programming through their site. But I think it's very different than what you do.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit more like the Lady Gaga model, to the degree that it's a fairly small team. We follow Oprah's lead and her instincts in a lot of ways. So, I think she looks at the digital platforms as another way to speak to her core audience. Mm-hmm. So, there's a whole network going on, and it's got a number of different kinds of programming, that we can promote through social media, etc. And then, I think there's a vertical kind of community that is involved in the things that she's most passionate about, like Super Soul Sunday or Life Class, things that are sort of the bigger questions of the spirit, that is really what she is most passionate about, and we can kind of hone in on that community, build that sort of database, and create a level of dialogue and a level of experience and engagement that leads to a whole nother set of businesses. So, if she's we're developing things like subscription businesses and experiences, and even looking at things like digital publishing, all of which are targeted from her heart to speak to a very vertical kind of narrow community that really can't get enough of all that sort of thing that she's also very engaged in. So, I think we look at developing sort of smaller communities that are interested in specific kinds of things that we can serve and that are close to Oprah's heart. That's one way that we're sort of looking at monetizing and strategizing. And the other is, how can we, with this network, innovate in a way that's different than anybody else has? Because, what do we have that no one else has? We have, Oprah Winfrey, who has, 17 million people following her on Twitter, and people want to connect with her, and she attracts all these people. Well, how can we reflect that on the air? So we've literally, with like Life Class, we've built in the social media experience into the programming itself. We're doing things with VU and with Storify, etc., where the feeds from the social platforms are being put up on a big screen while the show is happening. She's Skyping with people, she's tweeting with people while the show is going on, and it kind of leads to a different viewer experience. So we're looking at innovating from that point of view. We're looking at innovating kind of on a two-screen experience with live tweets and getting our talent to live tweet during shows. That's had a huge impact. And then looking at smaller vertical communities to say, what is Oprah's voice with those communities, and what does that mean in terms of where we can go in a more dedicated way?
There's obviously this opportunity to draw awareness to the cause, to the need for research, and how do we take advantage of that? It's something that we're sort of exploring, and so the learning from your experiences, I think, is incredibly valuable.
Well, and it's also using the data, just like you said. You're going to find, what are the trends that are bubbling up that people want to talk about, and you can actually build that into the creative product in a very authentic way that's going to resonate with people.
We started to work with a young chef. He's younger than me. I mean, I don't think he's even 40. And he found out at around 35 that he had rheumatoid arthritis. One day he woke up and he couldn't move. And nobody could figure out what it was. It took 3 days, and then they finally diagnosed him. And lives with incredible pain. I've been mentoring him in some ways and helping him he's a restaurant owner, but I've been helping him get into the product line area and publishing and so on. And we did a digital deal together where I paired him with a sponsor, and we built a site for him within our site. And really what he wanted most and what the sponsor wanted most was for him to build that community, because it didn't exist. Because rheumatoid arthritis is one of those things that's really hard to diagnose. So people think it's something else, or, but even if it is something similar, there's a lot of diseases that cross over with similar symptoms. But the minute that we started to create a community, we realized there were no other support groups out there for this, and people they were at all kinds of stages in the disease where they might have just learned they had it, or thought they might have it, or their medication's not working. But just having that place for them to go where they can talk, and get inspiration by seeing him go on with his life, because so many of these people were also depressed because they didn't want to get up. But here's this guy that kept going. And I think for you, what you're going to do this fall with this show is going to be so inspirational for people, because even if it's, they just say, oh, I had that experience, or it just makes them feel not alone in the disease. I think it's going to be a phenomenal success.
Mm-hmm. And then driving, of course, using Twitter and Facebook to drive them to a location. Sounds like, between your websites, let's talk about the websites a little bit more now. Is there a team behind your websites, and who's doing the analytics? Again, there's a big question throughout the day. What kinds of things are you driving people to do, to buy books, to watch shows? What kind of engagement? How many people are behind those? What's your team there?
I can try and answer that. I think it's probably between the tech people, the marketing people, and the content people, I would say 20 to 30 people,
right.
Working on Oprah.com, and then the Huffington Post own platform, and then part of the digital marketing team works with us on the social media stuff. So we have actually something called a heartbeat group that we start out with what is most important to Oprah and own, and kind of make sure that we are pulsing that out across all the platforms. Right. And sort of creating that feedback loop back and forth. So, for Oprah.com per se, it is an ad sales driven business, but we are building different databases, as you said, for different portions of the audience, so that we can then look at those different parts of the audience and different parts of Oprah's community overall, and start to focus content and different experiences, different kinds of packages of content, etc., and experiment with, what are the future models besides sort of content for advertising.
Mm-hmm. Ro, do you? Or sorry, would you like to jump in? I know you can't wait.
I can't wait.
CRM, let's get wonky. Okay.
I'm very eager to talk about this.
Sure.
I guess in the music space, for a lot of artists, the label handles managing a lot of the websites, but websites are kind of becoming almost irrelevant. What's becoming more meaningful is our apps, and that going back to that direct relationship with the fan and the personality. And so what we're really looking into is releasing content through mobile apps for all of our artists.
Oh, great. You're building these yourself, or?
Yeah, it's that direct relationship. You also have the data. You can send push notifications.
Wow. Great. And Adam, who is in charge of analytics? Is there a team there? How big is that? What kind of skill set?
Well, my background's in analytics, so,
so
that's something.
You're hired. I think everyone in this room wants to hire you right now. Good job. Well done.
But that's something that I'm focused on, and there's a few other people in our team. The CMO of our company also has analytics and digital background, so we work hand in hand in terms of app strategy and a lot of the digital strategy in the organization.
Fantastic. There's probably a million questions from the audience. I don't want to monopolize this panel because I know you probably have questions. And I would say, too, if Sonal or Deanna, you might have some answers to questions, or you may have some questions, please. You do have all the answers. Good. We'll start with Dick Satrins, representing U.S. News and World Report today. Thank you, Dick.
Thanks, Dave. Hi. I'm just curious. Obviously, you have the great challenge of socializing Oprah or Rachael. That's kind of easy. But if you're the network or the owner of the platform, what are they doing to get ahead of it or to manage you? I mean, how do they get their foot into the social media if they don't own the celebrity or the personality? We know, and another sector is sports. Athletes have been really smart about tweeting themselves and building a following, and that's that makes them a real force.
Right. Oh yeah, I think that's completely relationship driven. I don't think there's any big secret to that. Oprah cares about the network, so she's willing to support the network. The network is there's a very close relationship between what the network's doing from a social media point of view and what she's doing, and it's really completely about building that level of collaboration and education and communication. I don't think it's anything more significant than that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I would say that they're not, It's not the kind of situation where they could tell Rachael, do this, because that just won't happen. She's going to do what she wants to do. But obviously, for her to do things to support her properties, whether it's her show or her magazine, that's going to benefit her. And she cares a lot about her teams, her various teams and the businesses. So, but she's going to say it in the way that she wants to say it or what she wants to say. And, you know, we're in a unique position. When I left Reuters, which was the ultimate matrixed organization, I went to Rachael and wanted to start something very nimble that was going to be wholly owned by her and not have anybody else involved, and was going to be profitable from the start, and it is. And we are therefore a small team. We outsource a lot, but that's what we do, is we maintain her voice and her brand. And she loves that little niche, to be able to say, this is mine, I can do what I want on RachelRay.com. It's going to be very different from what might be on Rachael Ray's show website or what they're doing socially. But like Oprah, I mean, of course they have a wonderful working relationship, so it kind of, she works hand in hand with their priorities, but also has her own. So.
And I think, Roy, you should touch on your events business too, because just like, we're monetizing in different ways now. So you've got experience with things, but you've built an events business from scratch as well for Rachel.
Like Katerina, I'm sure that you experience this with Lady Gaga. She probably gets great ideas and wants to do things which makes your job exciting. The same is true of Rachael. There's sort of, with the digital business we created. I went to her and said, let's do this. You've got, she was at the time just on Food Network, so she was only known by about a quarter of the country. And I was at Reuters publishing her magazine, which is how we met. And it was right around that time that Oprah really discovered her and made her who she is, by, telling the world, I feel that this woman has something to say. And next thing we know, Rachael has a daytime show, which now she's nationally known. But just to give her that little piece of sanity, I said, why don't we start this digital business? And since then, the thing that I love about my job and why I've stayed with her 8 years is that she can come to me and say, hey, I want to do this. And I will help her figure out how to do it and how to make money from it. And if it's not a great idea or one I don't think is practical, I'll tell her that, and either she'll understand or she won't take no for an answer, and we'll lose a little money, but we'll figure it out together, which is fun. But with the events business, 6 years ago, she said, look, my husband's in an indie rock band. I love rock and roll. I love Austin, Texas. Can we try to put together something down there during South by Southwest? So I happened to be working with a digital client of mine at the time, who was an ad sales client who was looking to do things outside of just digital. And I convinced them to underwrite this whole event, which was going to give them a real multimedia experience. So not only they'd have the digital piece, but they'd have this physical touch point of the event itself, and they'd have Rachael there in a very different way than anyone's ever seen her, because she's not being paid to endorse them. She's there doing what she wants to do. And it was so successful that now we're going back in 2 weeks for our 6th year, and it's 8,000 people will come on it's become now a 4-day thing, ending with this big event on Saturday. So 8,000 people. I've got 6 sponsors, 42 bands we've booked, Rachael's food, and then there's a supplemental 4-day event. So it's been this huge challenge, but really fun, turning something that was so off-brand for her in some ways, because people said music and I don't get it, but making it a reality. And I really think that the reason this happened is because she's truly passionate about it. She wanted to do it not for the money, but because it was something she loved, and the consumer felt that. So now it's become this thing that everybody wants to go to, and the sponsors are more than willing to come and underwrite it. And we're taking it now this year to a national level. We're going to partner with an organization, I can't say yet, to help us grow it to, we're adding 3 cities.
Great.
But that's the really kind of exciting part of what we do, I think, probably all of us.
It's fun. Any other, I thought Christine Montgomery, Chief Digital Officer. Yes, previously CDO at Center for Public Integrity, now at the World Bank.
thinking their drink's coming. Thank you. I had a question about littlemonsters.com because it's fascinating to me and brilliant to get away from Twitter and Facebook. And there's only certain brands that could do that. Could you just talk a little bit more about that? How you guys, what the thought process was, how long it took, how much it cost, how do you tell people about it?
Definitely. I guess, you know, I wasn't there for the inception of it, but I can speak to it. And our belief was that the future of social was around micro networks and communities forming around particular interests. And like you said, it's not the entire population, but there's definitely a lot of companies that are now using backplanes technology to build their own networks, whether it's churches, other artists, brands. It's an amazing way for that brand or for that personality to actually create active engagement between themselves and the audience. And
so Backplanes is the technology company that...
You've invested in Backplanes, or that's your proprietary platform?
We created Backplane with funding from
Sequoia
and Google Ventures.
And do you OEM that to other parties, or is that yours and yours alone, or do you license it to other
Yeah, we're licensing
artists?
it now to brands and to other artists.
And you let the other artists maintain the ownership
The
of the
data.
content.
Yeah, and the data.
Really? Fabulous.
And how do you market it though? Because I went to it and you can get into Facebook or Twitter, but how would I know about it?
You would know about it if it's your particular interest. If you're a fan of Gaga, you know, she obviously kind of cross promotes that on Twitter and some of her other social networks. And, you know, if you're part of a church group that's very niche, you would know about it because that's your interest.
See, it's a complete opposite. I mean, that's what Eric Garland was saying, right? Big champagne, he's big into data, knows the data, and it's such a mess in the music industry. I get stuff from Clear Channel all the time. My nephew just said the same thing. He gets all the stuff from Clear Channel, and it's so unrelated to anything I do. But this sounds like really niche. Like if I was following Lady Gaga, I'd probably get the email, and I'd probably want it. You're probably not getting the email because you didn't opt into any, right? So it seems very unobtrusive, yet very, very powerful. The people who want it are getting it.
Yeah.
The people who are on the periphery aren't, so it's not intrusive. And it's right where music needs to be. That is exactly where things need to go, not just music.
It's truly that direct relationship because she comments on the photos that her fans post up there, and they're so creative. And so it's truly active, authentic relationship that you don't really get on Facebook and some of the other social media platforms.
Fantastic. Any other questions? I'm sorry. Yes, Tim Tulloch from Hootsuite. Okay.
Quick question for you about Little Monsters. Is that exclusively where you're doing your social now, or is that just your main channel and you still use the other channels as well?
We still use, I mean, she still uses the other channels, and all of our other artists still use a lot of the other channels. I mean, it's for a lot of our other channels and for the brands that we're launching, it's hard to deny that visual web is kind of creeping up, and especially in 2012 with Tumblr, Pinterest, Instagram all gaining 10 million users each. So it's kind of an integrated strategy. But Gaga in particular is very focused on Little Monsters and Twitter.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Any other questions? Yes. Perry Hewitt from Harvard University.
So you've talked a lot about the visual web and measuring the visual web and analytics separately. Have you done anything in terms of measuring the visual web? There's a company called Curate we've been interested in to sort of understand how to measure the performance of some of the graphic stuff we're doing. I was wondering if any of you have taken that on.
How do you spell that? Curate. Okay, good.
No, that'd be interesting to look into that.
I mean, we try to look at anything we can get our hands on, but I don't know that company. But I mean, like for Pinterest, we've just started. I got very excited about Pinterest when that came on the scene, but I was using it more to not necessarily promote our site or our products, but really to promote the personality of who we were by, you know, pinning things that weren't necessarily ours. And then I think that world kind of evolved, and then people really did start to use it promotionally. So we sort of do two things there. We do use it somewhat for our store to promote products, and that is very trackable. But some of the other stuff is really just to kind of, you know, communicate a feeling or kind of represent who we are. And I think that with Instagram, we've done very little in the terms of analytics, you know, but where we can, we do.
We're using data very differently. We are, you know, clearly we have a few calls to action now. We're trying to figure out what content, what posts, you know, sort of drive that call to action. Someone mentioned earlier today, they're in the midst of the painful CRM implementation. We're there as well. But the biggest thing for data for us is data that we can match to like clinical trials, right? So, and we realized there was nothing else out there, so we ended up building it ourselves. And we have a separate website that's not attached to our CRM because we want to protect the patient data, but it collects, you know, self-reported, you know, very sort of minimal profile questions, and then matches individuals to the clinical trials that are near them and that need them. And then we will want to build upon that, which is what more can we collect from patients? Whether, you know, it's their on-off periods, the medications that they're taking, their moods, their sleep, their eating habits, their exercise. Can we collect that in a database and make that, you know, de-identify that and make that available for research, for hypothesis generation and trend analysis? And that's sort of the direction that we're headed in terms of being able to capture data. And there's really nothing out there that can do that. So we're realizing that we have to build it ourselves.
Fantastic. Thanks. We do have a question from Twitter. Jay Janeski, who was a Chaddock Elig placement at the Rockefeller Foundation. He's now new media director there. He asks, are micro networks the future of social? Katerina?
I think we already answered
Right,
that.
we did. Good timing. Yes, we did. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you. I know you've been very generous with your time. Up next, we're going to have David Payne and Riley McDonough do a fireside chat. But it was just so great to see incredible women behind incredible women. I want to thank you all very much for being here. Please, a round of applause for some very incredible women.